Okay, now we're gonna break down one of the lateral progressions that we have. We're gonna go over bounding. Bounding refers to anytime you leave one leg and land on another leg. So I would challenge you to learn some of the nomenclature behind your exercises instead of just using layman terms like skaters. Instead, a lateral bound. A bound is where you leave one leg and land on another leg, whereas a hop is when you leave one leg and land on the same leg. So we're gonna do a lateral bound and stick. So it's gonna be to the side. Lainey, we can do bounds for distance or for height, and they both kind of serve different purposes. If you're working with a post-op ACL, the first thing I might expose them to is bounds for height, because it keeps the forces relatively even on the knee. But if you're working with like stage 3 rehab for like a lateral ankle sprain, you might want to focus more on distance now, because you want them to experience that more lateral force on their ankle. But Lainey's going to perform a bound and stick. Remember, the reason why we added a stick into it is so that we're not overloading her system's ability to redirect force yet. We first want to acquire the skill of the movement. So Lainey will bound out to one side, land and stick, bound out to the other, land and stick. Remember, each time with a stick, I tell them, perform your stick for long enough that I can actually take a picture of it. If I can't, you're moving too quickly. After the lateral bound and stick, we're gonna move at a 45-degree angle. So Lainey's hips and torso are gonna face forward, but she is jumping out at a 45-degree angle and back at a 45-degree angle. We're making it a little more complex, but we're gonna keep the stick in there so that she can focus on the technique of the movement. Lainey will show us a 45-degree bound and stick. Her hips and her shoulders are staying forward. We're just getting into a little more of that transversal plane. Okay, that then progresses just like our linear progressions for plyos into adding a bounce. And so we want her high force absorption to then have to be overcome, but by just a small force production, and then her small force absorption when she lands from that bounce to then be overcome by a high force production. And so Lainey's gonna stay in that 45-degree bound, but she's gonna add a bounce before she leaves again. So she jumps out, adds a bounce, boom. And that bounce should have less force on it than the actual jump itself. So it's a way to start exposing her to that amortization phase within her plyometric capacity. Lastly, once she's been exposed to that, we would then go to a continuous lateral bound, okay? Lainey at a 45-degree angle is gonna jump and then try to leave the ground as quickly as possible, especially once you get to a continuous plyometric or a quick force plyometric. You want to stress that they're spending the least amount of ground contact time as possible. Just like in the gym, when you're working on power-based drills to transfer over to sport, you need to perform them with a high level of intent. If you're trying to rehab someone's plyometric capacity for maybe a reduction in risk of injury, you have to train that at the level of intent that would actually cause an decreased risk of injury prevention.